And welcome back from that little break there. Now we'll be moving on to our conversations. Like I originally said, we'll be talking about Migratory Bird Day in the world. And here's a short background that to set the pace for our conversations.
Birds are a group of warm-blooded vertebrates constituting the class Aves, characterized by feathers, toothless beaked jaws, the laying of hard-shelled eggs, a high metabolic rate, a four-chambered heart, and a strong yet lightweight skeleton. Every year, birds in their large numbers travel thousands of miles to find warmer climates, foods, and nesting grounds, a movement referred to as birds' migration. These movements portray changing seasons and reminder of the beauty of nature. Birds' migration has come to be celebrated today, specifically referred to as World Migratory Birds Day. The idea about World Migratory Day celebration was brought up in 1993 by visionaries from the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center and first named International Migratory Bird Day. While originally directed by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation along with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the year 2018 saw organizations collaborate to celebrate the day, including the Convention on Migratory Services and Agreement on the Conservation of African Eurasian Migratory Water Birds. Although the official day for the celebration of World Migratory Bird Day is the second Saturday in May each year, there is a recognition that migratory birds stop in various places along their journey, therefore allowing for flexibility in the celebration depending on the location. Each year, a theme is declared, bringing to light issues inherent in the pursuit of the conservation of migratory birds. The conservation theme for the year 2023 is Water, Sustaining Bird Life. On the interview segment of Lens on Africa today, we shall look at the significance of bird migration, nature of birds migration, and the need for celebrating World Migratory Birds Day among other issues. Stay tuned.
And welcome back. Now, joining us in the studio to carry on this conversation are Assistant Conservator General in charge of Ecology and Resource Management Department, overseeing the Human Resource Department of the National Park Services, Dr. Mohammed Abubakar Kabir. It's good to have you in the studio, sir.
It's a pleasure. The name is Mohammed Abakura. Not
Abakura.
Yes.
Okay. Apologies there for that short typo.
Thank you.
We'll get it fixed.
Yeah.
All right. Also joining us via Zoom is an ornithologist by training. He has a PhD in conservation biology from the AP Leventis Ornithological Research Institute, University of Jos. He is the Director General of the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, Dr. Joseph Onoja. Welcome to Lens on Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, Doctor, it's a pleasure. Let me start with you. Considering that we have many major problems all across Africa, is World Migratory Bird Day something that we should be considering all of Africa's problems?
Yes, it is something that we should consider because it helps us to come to the realization that we are not the only ones in this world. We share this space called Mother Earth with other biodiversity that are important in our own well-being. Because if we don't know about these things, then we'll abuse them. And that's what we have been seeing. And that's why a day like this is very important so that we can create this awareness, so that people will be aware, number one, of the importance of birds, on the importance of their migration, and the shared resources they have with us. birds have been shown to be indicators of what is happening in the environment. So by studying them, we'll be able to know what is happening so that we will avert any crisis that we may face as humanity. And that's why it's important for us to know about them and know what concerns them so that we'll be able to make sure that the environment is healthy for them, so eventually the environment will be healthy for us as well. So that's why it's important for us to celebrate a day like this to create that awareness.
All right. Doctor, thank you very much, Dr. Onoja. Dr. Mohammed, let me get that question back to you. In a society like Nigeria, like I mentioned, we have very pressing needs. In the hierarchy of needs, I mean, if we take all the money we could spend on bird conservation and put it into education, isn't that more important? And if it's not, why should we put the money and the time and effort into this particular area?
Well, thank you very much for that. I think just like the way Doctor started, you know, conservation of birds is very important.
Okay.
Because the birds, there are functions, there are roles that these birds carry out that are important to our well-being.
Okay.
For example, some of the roles that these birds play, they play very significant roles in insect controls.
Yes.
Yes. Secondly, they are good in dispersing seeds.
Yes, they are actually.
As they migrate, they feed.
Yes.
As they feed, the droppings.
Yes.
They drop these seeds, they disperse them. So as eventually these plants will grow, these plants are being fed on by animals, and the humans use this, get these benefits. Again, the birds are good pollinators. If we are to value pollination, it's going to be in billions. We cannot even quantify amount sometimes you can put on pollination, because from pollination you get the foods you eat.
Okay.
So all these are activities of birds. So
And
without birds,
this is interesting. As a layman, I mean, the layman who's watching out there would just consume birds fly in the sky.
Yeah.
The birds that are important are the ones that we can eat, the ones we can't eat. But listen to you talk now. I understand that they play a far more significant role than just flying in the skies.
Exactly.
And it's amazing. It's
exactly.
amazing.
Even apart from that, the droppings, as they migrate in their thousands,
Yes.
you see droppings, or the guano that
Yes.
is being called. It's a very good source of fertilizer.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And this fertilizer, the plants also benefit from the fertilizers.
And we in turn
benefit from the plants.
We'll come back to that. Dr. Onoja, I'm going to ask, we're talking about migratory bird. How many kinds of migratory birds exist? How many migratory patterns? Tell us more about the whole migratory system of these birds.
Okay, yeah, so for us to understand migration, we need to understand why birds migrate in the first place.
All right.
Because there are different reasons that make them to migrate. Number one, they may migrate to search for food. They may migrate to find better habitat. They may migrate to even find mates or to even breed. So the popular one that we know is what we call the Palearctic migration. That is birds migrating from Europe or from the north to the south.
Okay.
And usually that happens during the winter, when the condition is critical in terms of when there is snow everywhere. Let me put in the layman's language.
Okay.
When snow covers everywhere, they will find difficult for food, and the food that is not available, they will need to eat more so that they will keep warm. Because if they are not warm, then they will die of coldness. So they need to move to warmer climates, and that is where they move from the northern part of the world to the southern part of the world.
Okay.
So if you look at that, then you find that there are different types of there are different migratory patterns in terms of, if you look at the Americas, so birds migrate from northern part of America to the southern part of America.
Yeah.
If you look at Africa and Europe, birds migrate from Europe to Africa. And if you look at the other parts going towards Russia, eastern part of Europe, birds migrate from that point to probably even to sometime in East and Southern Africa. And then if you look at the China area, birds migrate from that part to Australia. So we have those different patterns of migration. And then sometimes this migration also can be seasonal.
Okay.
It's seasonal because when you change from one season to the other, I know this also determines food availability.
Yeah, that does.
So that's how also they move. So essentially, birds migrate for survival, to increase their survivability, and that is why they migrate. And this survival can be in terms of trying to mate, so that they can breed and produce new ones,
Yeah.
or they will need to feed so that they will be able to survive the next season. And that is how they migrate. So that's the summary of the why birds migrate and the pattern of which they migrate.
Phenomenal. Thank you very much, Dr. Onaja. Dr. Mohammed, let me get back to you. In our previous conversation, we're talking about the importance of the bird migration, and you laid quite simply in a vivid picture that one of the things they do, cross-pollination, is amazing. Their fertilization, they do a lot for us, more than just flying and more than just birds' source of protein, so to speak. Now that we found out that they're so important, are there things that hinder bird migration, and is there anything we can do about them?
Yes, in migration, migration is a process.
Yes.
They move from point A to B,
yes,
and then B to A back. It's a back and forth movement. And in migrating, it's a process. So there are a lot of factors that it's a problem when migration comes in.
Okay.
One of such is, as they're migrating, they are encountering a lot of challenges. Now, these challenges could be as a result of habitat loss.
That's a very serious one.
Yes, because as they migrate, they move from thousands of kilometers. A bird can move from, let's say, from Alaska to, let's say, like Australia. I think it's the longest one of the birds. It can move for about 11 days non-stop.
11 days?
11 days non-stop.
Wow.
Yes, there are birds that stop along the way to feed. But as they stop over, they have stopovers. And then in these stopovers, if the habitat is no longer there,
wow, that's
then
serious.
It becomes a problem, because they're expected to refuel,
like
take water, food.
Rest
Some of them rest a little, then continue the journeys. So if these habitats are destroyed, then it's a big issue.
Wow.
That it will affect the movement, it will affect other processes such as nesting, the young ones. All this will be affected, eventually leading to the loss of that species.
This is amazing.
There are also problems of pollution as well.
Yes.
As they're moving, the issue of pollution is also a problem. Some of these waters are polluted as a result of dumping of waste effluents into some of these places.
Yes.
Climate change is a factor.
Yeah.
It affects the movement of these animals. Apart from climate change, there are also human factors such as hunting. People hunt for these species along the way. Set traps. Recently in Nigeria, I think there was a species that was identified. It came all the way from, I think, from Europe.
Yeah.
It was ringed, and it tells a lot of stories about the bird, where it came from, so it's being followed.
Yes.
So probably, the bird was killed.
Oh dear.
Because we don't lay much importance on these things.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll get back. Dr. Onaja, now understanding the importance and the challenges these birds face, what can we do to ameliorate some of these challenges to ensure that, because they're an important part of our ecosystem, our survival, what can we do to ensure that some of these challenges are either reduced, minimized, or completely removed?
Yeah, so that is why a day like this is very important for us to continue to create awareness, because when the importance or when the use of something is not known, abuse is inevitable. So number one, people need to be aware. That awareness creation is a day like this, so that people will know that, oh yeah, this day is set aside for the celebration of migratory birds, so that we understand their importance, and they will be able to reduce the threat that they face. In terms of, and it's all connected in terms of the way we do our things. The hunting that Dr. Kabir talked about is so that people can reduce it. In fact, the hunting can even go to the extent that people set large nets. For instance, in Malta and all of those places, they set large nets, and when birds go through them, they just harvest them in their numbers. So when they do that, they will reduce the work or the function of these birds in the ecosystem. So number one is to create awareness. and then have enabling laws. That's, and the role that we have to play, it comes across from different aspects. The government have the role to play, institutions have their role to play, and individuals also will have our roles to play. And sometimes when we want to hunt these birds, we hunt them in their thousands, which is not sustainable at all. Because the argument may come that, some people feed on these, some people harvest them. Yeah, we may not necessarily condemn completely people who harvest them, because this may be the only source of protein of some people. But we must come to realization that some of these harvests are done unsustainably. And some people even go to the extent of even killing them with chemicals and shooting them down. And also, the example I give, setting traps to get all of them. Some of them are even dead, and some of them become useless. So that awareness needs to be created, and the laws, enabling laws that we have, need to be enforced. And that's something that is that's a gap that we need to close. We need to enforce our laws and ensure that these laws and people are meant to pay for it, so that if our laws are enforced, then it will reduce some of this threat. But the first thing is that we need to be aware, because there's nothing as important as all knowing this role that the birds play and also playing our part to protect them. It's a carrot and stick approach, so that people who
Dr. Onoja, you mentioned something about the carrot and stick approach, and we hear a lot of the stick. Now, part of the carrot approach would be selling the importance, the profits, the gain, the value in terms of business, in terms of money, in terms of survival. What are we doing to ensure that that part of the communication is heard, that people hear that these birds actually add up? The government, first of all, is very conscious of that fact and takes that consciousness and that urgency and passes it down up to the local level, so that people carry the consciousness with them that they are preserving these birds is preserving their own life, is preserving the economy, not just a good deed.
Yeah, so that is why if I piggyback on what Dr. Kabir mentioned earlier about the significant role they play, the ecosystem service that these birds provide. In terms, he mentioned pest control, he mentioned pollination, and he mentioned seed dispersal. So if you pick each and every one of these points, they add up to our what we call natural capital accounting. That now governments and different economics are trying to make sure that it becomes part of our our GDP, so that we will know the importance of all of this. By the time we know the importance, it helps us to be able to put it, we are not just spending money in protecting these birds, but they are also important in our economy. So by the time we create this awareness, it helps trickle it down to the people who should be aware. Because if we kill these birds and we remove them from our system, and we have invasion of insects, we will not be able to stay where we are, even no matter how much we make in terms of killing or selling the birds. So that's why it's important for us to create that balance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Onoja. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We look forward to expanding this conversation as we carry along.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. So, Dr. Mayanai, coming back to you, now we talked about the three things you talked about. These are important things. I mean, just hearing you talk about them, it's a sense of urgency, I feel, and sense of importance. Where are we in communicating this importance to policymakers at state, at local government levels? Because a lot of this implementation, the laws may be made at federal, but a lot of the implementation is at local government level. What are we doing to communicate this message you just gave us in languages and forms that people can understand, and so that we can conserve our...
Exactly. Just to buttress the point, like the days like this, it's a day we create awareness. But the mandate that we have, like in the National Park Service, or we the professionals in conservation, is something we do every day. We don't wait for a day like, let's say, a day like this to synthesize the communities or talk about conservation. It's something we do. It's our job to educate, right from, even apart from the policy makers, right from schools, we try to educate people on the essence of conservation, why we must conserve, right from schools, conservation clubs, we start from there, bring it to higher levels, educate at a higher level, and then during programs like this, we reach out to larger audiences, so that the issue of conservation should not just begin by just talking about it, but there is need for us to implement some of these policies. There are a lot of policies out there. But these policies need to be strengthened.
So tell us about some of the challenges of implementation, because this is your area.
Yeah. Well, the challenges of implementation has to do with, one, awareness itself.
Okay.
You know, we need to understand why these laws are there in the first place.
Right.
You know, we make laws, like, you know, in this country sometimes we make the laws, but implementation becomes a problem. The laws are there. Some of the laws are though weak. You know, they are weak laws. For example, if you go to the states, for example, there are laws that has to do with protecting the environment.
Yeah.
For example, some of the laws are dated back since the early 60s, even 60s or thereabout. These laws are almost outdated, because you find a situation where, you know, a penalty for destruction or killing of even an elephant, they'll tell you it's a few naira.
Yeah, 500 naira,
500 naira or less.
Naira or less.
You understand? So these laws are outdated. They need to be reviewed right from the state level. At the federal level, yes, we are doing a lot. We're doing a lot to ensure that these laws are implemented. And we try as much as possible to also reach out to the politicians. You know, they need to understand the importance of some of these laws and why these laws are there. So we try as much as possible to work along with the legislature in order to, you know, make them understand the essence of some of these laws, of which we are having a lot of support.
Okay.
We are really, the community, various committees that were working in the National Assembly are very, very supportive.
Right.
They understand these laws, and we believe
in a short
time, most of these laws will be straightened. And apart from talking about laws, you know, recently, more parks, the president established consented to the establishment of 10 new parks. Now, this thing passed through the legislation, and it's because of the understanding of the law. They passed it. So now we're at the stage of waiting for the presidential consent. And after that, the 10 new parks adds to what we have, the 7 that we have, making it 17.
That's fine. So let me ask, because we're probably out of time, your final words speaking to Africans, African heads of states and other Africans. You just look at the camera and speak to them, your words to them as we...
Yeah, on behalf of the Conservator General, Dr. Ibrahim Musa Goni, he's so passionate about the work itself. He was supposed to be here, but due to exigencies of duty, he was not able to make it to this program. But one of the agendas of his administration is to ensure that wildlife, wherever they are protected. You know, we have various categories of protected areas. We have the national parks, game reserves, and forest reserves. So, and each of these areas has its different laws. The national parks managed by the federal government, the states, the game reserves, and the local government with the forest reserve. So each of these parks are managed differently. So the national park, headed by the Conservator General, Dr. Ibrahim Musa Goni, is doing quite a lot.
So what's your final word in one sentence, and we go?
I want to call on all Nigerians that the conservation of biodiversity is for our own benefit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abubakar.
We should do everything possible to protect it. And it is only when we protect the biodiversity, we as humans will be able to benefit. Yes.
Thank you very much. My guest has been Dr. Mohammed Abakura. It's been a pleasure having you and having this conversation. By the way, one of the first things I wanted to become when I was a child was a zoologist. So meeting you guys, it's quite an experience.
It's not late to be
well, we'll talk about that after the show.